Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. You are locked into Revive FM on 94.0 on the Power Hour with your host today, myself, Louise Power. This show is about community matters, diversity and inclusion, a platform for women, leadership, entrepreneurship and inspirational stories. I'm so glad to be in the studio today. The weather is looking nice and sunny and bright out there. So we're so glad to be getting over that sort of like grey springtime British weather and moving on hopefully into some more sunnier spells. And today in the studio, I am very proud to have somebody here from the community, one of the a serial social entrepreneur and solicitor, Mr. William Chamberlain. Welcome to the studio, William.
Thanks very much, Louise. Lovely to see you again.
Lovely to see you too. It's great to have you here. William and I met because we're both involved in social impact in the London Olympic Park, and I thought it'd be great for William to come here today to share a little bit about him, a little bit about his story, his journey. William is the founder of an organisation called Creative Wick, but to name but a few, based in the London Olympic Park. He will be here today to talk to us about his journey, the things that he's been involved in since the beginning of the London Olympics, and we'll just be having a really nice organic conversation. It does include the Newham and wider boroughs of East London. So we do invite people to call up and ask questions or type questions to us on YouTube or use a telephone call and give us a ring. But we'll just be here today having a little bit of a conversation, finding out a little bit more about William, what he stands for, what his organisation stands for, and we'll be taking it from there. So welcome.
Excellent, thank you. And it was actually funny, we met, didn't we, originally on that research project into local entrepreneurs and the kind of opportunities and support that they might need in order to develop into a thriving business. And we're very lucky, I think, to have so much investment and the big university partners coming into the area that are allowing these opportunities. So yeah, great to see you again.
Yeah, really good to see you. And just tell us a little bit about yourself. And yeah, I know that you're based over there now in the London Olympic Park, but I'm sure there's a backstory. It's been a big journey between London 2012 and today, and it would be just good to sort of like introduce yourself. I know you wear a few hats, so solicitor and serial entrepreneur, and even within the serial entrepreneur there are a few hats within the entrepreneurship. So it would be good if you could just introduce you. And where did it all start, William?
Goodness, it all started when I came to university here in East London. I came to Queen Mary, and I started as an undergrad in 1989. And I'd come from Northamptonshire, so not very far north of London. So I was familiar with London. I wasn't very familiar with the East End. Obviously, there's that sort of, I don't know if it's necessarily a romantic vision of the East End, but I was very, very excited to come here to Queen Mary. It's one of the only campus universities in London at the time. And I started off living out in South Woodford and commuting into the campus. I was studying a geography degree. And the degree was all about really how Canary Wharf was going to be the big economic change for East London and bring investment and opportunities for the deprived communities of East London. And for a variety of reasons, I think we all know that certainly didn't happen to start with. I think obviously much better now. But yeah, I had a pretty non-eventful undergrad career probably, and did my geography degree, did a course in social justice, which I think probably opened my eyes to a lot of the issues that I now work in and with now today. But yeah, I think it was a bit of a baptism of fire, I think, coming from leafy Northamptonshire down to East London. And I think we could see right from the start there were some tensions in the community. There were issues, there were concerns, I think, about safety, and certainly as students I was aware that there was some tension between the university community and the residential community that sometimes spilled over. But on the whole, I mean, I was so lucky. East London was the most amazing place because it's got this amazing sense of community. it was obvious to me there were still people here that had been through the Blitz and that Blitz spirit, and obviously East London has got that heritage of the women's rights movement and the anti-fascist movement, and over a long period, every wave of immigration practically has arrived in East London and got itself established, and then moved out of the area, and as it's grown stronger. But it's always been interesting to me how East London has been this welcoming place, mostly.
Yeah, very a diverse melting pot, isn't it, of all different cultures and immigration stories and people coming from different places all over the globe. Where we are now, where we're sat in Newham, very, very diverse, multicultural area. And I was really interested to find out, you said that you came from, was it Hampshire?
Northamptonshire, just north, about 60 miles north of
Northamptonshire.
London.
Yeah, into London. And what was your driving force and sort of inspiration around studying social justice? Was it coming into East London, or did you have sort of like, was there something sort of like pulling you towards change and impact?
It was the social sciences were definitely the part of my undergrad course that stayed with me most. I think when I was actually doing it, I probably enjoyed the physical geography side of things and field trips and getting away and going on beaches and glaciers and stuff like that. But really interestingly, it's been the social geography side of things that stayed with me. Economic geography, there was feminist geography that I studied with Gillian Rose, historic geography with Philip Ogden, who then went on to become Vice Chancellor of Queen Mary, and we've always stayed in touch. Human geography with Dr. Ray Hall. It was, there was Roger Lee, did economic geography, and social justice was a course by Professor D.M. Smith, and that's the one I suppose that has stayed with me most. But I think it's testament that I can still remember all those names.
Yeah.
Of the people that, I was 19 and I was the typical undergrad, I suppose. I spent too much time in the student union. I played a bit of rugby. I had a good time. And when I graduated, I was lucky enough to get a job in publishing as a sort of graduate trainee, and embarked on my working career. And it was there that I got involved with intellectual property and rights and contracts in the publishing industry that I think probably gave me the confidence to think, well, maybe I could be a solicitor and go to law school. And my family had a long line of solicitors. My great-grandfather, my grandfather, and my dad were all solicitors, and there's a family firm in Northamptonshire. So, there was a recession, I think, in 1993. And I did some work in London in various other places, some sales jobs and what have you. And nothing was really working. So I took the opportunity to go back to university and retrain and come back again as a lawyer.
Following the family footsteps.
Yeah. Of course, they were very proud. And we had a photograph in the evening newspaper in Northamptonshire with the three of us, the three generations on the office steps. And, that sort of thing is nice, family businesses and the importance of family and community. And I think that's really what East London's got. It's this community of villages. And London is a network of villages, really, isn't it? And we're very lucky to have some very exciting villages. But of course, the Canary Wharf project, as I say, didn't really work. And so when I went off in my career and became a solicitor, and I was working in the media and entertainment industry, so I had some glamorous clients. Madonna was one of my clients, which was exciting. Keith Emerson from Emerson, Lake and Palmer was a client, which also I got to meet him, which was exciting. And I got more and more into sports law and sports sponsorship, and I got this opportunity to join the Olympic bid back in 2004, and jumped at the chance. I worked on the commercial team, and it was our team's job to go out to UK PLC and raise money from the private sector to pay for the bid. Yeah. And Seb Coe was the boss, and it was all very exciting.
Seb Coe was the man on the screen. That was the person that we was exposed to the most, and talking to the cameras and to the people about the prospect, really,
And
wasn't
the
it? Because
legacy.
and the legacy.
Yeah.
But at the time when you was involved in it, it hadn't come into fruition. You was part of that journey, wasn't you?
Absolutely. It was the legacy promise that really reignited my interest in the whole of the social justice, the whole of the economic geography of East London.
Yeah.
How, Ken Livingstone had said he's only going to back this bid for London to host the Olympic Games if it means that the economies of East and West London are balanced, and that means investing an awful lot in East London and providing opportunities for the people that live there. And on the Olympic bid, of course, the promise that we made in our bid document that was submitted to the International Olympic Committee in, I think it was December 2004, it was sent in.
Wow. And
it had that promise in it that the communities around the Olympic Park would benefit from the Games. And I think that's always stuck with me. And I was very interested, obviously, when we won, how the legacy was going to be delivered. Because it's, I was lucky enough to be out in Singapore when we had the announcement. I was no longer working for the bid because my role had finished. We raised the money to pay for it from the private sector. So my job ended, and I was out there staying with my brother, who was living in Singapore at the time. He got us tickets to the governor's residence on the hill when the announcement was made, and then I was able to gate crash the after party with old colleagues from London 2012. And it was extraordinary because of the amount of energy expended in everyone was sitting around just going, I'm glad I don't have to deliver it. It's great. We won. But
I was even thinking about, like, between 2004 right up to the announcement that we would be having the Olympic Games. I don't remember when the announcement came that it would, we'd got it. Was that sort of like 2007, 2008?
Well, it was July 2005, if you remember.
2005.
It was the day before the London bombings. So we went from that incredible high to absolute devastation. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because I was actually going to say, and you just made a very significant point about something terrible actually that happened in between. Because I was going to ask you about how it felt between 2004 and then seeing everything coming to fruition up to the London 2012 Games. Must have been an incredible feeling. But then having had such a terrible tragedy happen in between,
massive reality
check.
And of course that there were far more important things to think about then. And I probably didn't really think about the Olympics very much after that for a couple of years. I went back to my legal career, and I was working in a Shoreditch law firm, developing a sports law practice, but my heart wasn't in it. And I started seeing stories in the paper about Olympic legacy and how it's being delivered and what have you. And I was interested in that. I was really interested in finding out how it was. And in 2008, my girlfriend at the time, she's now my wife, we had the opportunity to move house. And we fancied East London, particularly near the bottom of the M11, to get out of London easily, get out to Norfolk and nice countryside and beaches and all that sort of thing. So we moved to Hackney Wick in 2008 and got a room in an old warehouse, sort of loft, if you like, and the Olympic Park was right on the doorstep. And I mean, I gave up my law job. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I'd taken one client with me. I thought, okay, well, I'm going to set up myself as a consultant and I'll see how I can do it. I think my wife gave me 6 months originally. She said, okay. She had a really good job working in the media in West London, and she was commuting from Hackney Wick every day and really didn't feel very much part of what was going on there. But I was a free agent. I didn't have a full-time job, and I got immersed in the artist community when I got there. And this is part of the issue, I think, with the massive regeneration projects is probably never knowing really about the fine grain of the areas that are going to be impacted by big developments like this. And certainly on the Olympic bid, I can't ever remember conversations about the existing creative cluster or the creative community, particularly in Hackney Wick and Fish Island, but in the wider East London area. And of course, because East London was the cheapest place to live in London, really, it was where all the artists traditionally lived, and Hackney Wick in particular. With the decline of the printing industry and lots of empty warehouses, they were being populated by artist studio providers. And, Space Studios, one of the biggest, oldest artist studio providers in the country, had 3 or 4 different buildings in Hackney Wick at the time. There was Mother, there was informal places, there were lots of galleries in warehouses.
I remember there being lots of, growing up in East London, I remember Carpenter's Road being full of sort of garages and,
the Fridge Mountain.
Yeah, mechanics and lots of place for sort of lots of artists as well. And it's sort of been a melting pot of sort of everything sort of creative, mechanical.
Yeah, I think the Yardley building, the old Yardley building on that was there, I think that had become one of the biggest artist studio complexes in the world. It was run by Acme, and that's obviously been demolished. So yeah, you're right. The area that I think was portrayed as something of a wasteland actually was London's biggest industrial estate. It had like 250 businesses, 2,500 people going there every day.
Small businesses, lots of small businesses.
And as you say, lots of people working in the waste management business. In breakers yards and fridge recycling and all the dirty industry. And East London traditionally was the dumping ground, wasn't it? Because the prevailing wind kept all the pollution out east, and that meant that all those nice places to the west of us
benefited,
had clean air.
benefited as opposed to East London. Exactly. And I've lived in East London all of my life, and I think it's a great place, but aside of the multi-million-pound Olympic Park, there is parts of East London where there are lots of poverty and deprivation,
exactly,
socio-economical difference, and these are subjects as well that I'm really passionate about. Are really important to me. And I remember sharing with you the fact that I had been working at the London Olympics and then come back round to having a business in the Olympic
in the Media and Broadcast
in the Media and Broadcast Centre, and just how amazing that was. And I was thinking, how many me's were there that were actually part of fulfilling that legacy promise? That lived in East London, worked in East London, potentially had a business in East London. So, what would you say maybe are some of the things that have sort of stood out to you since you've been over in the Olympic Park and you've had involvement in creating some of these places for social impact? Do you feel as though, as part of the legacy and as part of some of these really fruitful things that we've discussed, that there has been engagement and interaction from the communities, the surrounding communities?
Yeah, very, very interesting. Because when I first got to Hackney Wick, as I said, I started to get involved. There was an art festival that started the August, I think, that we moved in, or July, August. Anyways, a few weeks after we moved in, we started seeing posters appearing on lampposts saying Hackney Wicked Art Festival is coming. I think it was the first edition of the festival, and it was artist run, art for art's sake, people without much, sharing resources and ideas and working together to share a vision. And I got in touch with them and I said, look, I've got a sponsorship background and a legal background. I'd love to help if I can. And I think I made the mistake of wearing a suit to my first meeting. And they
too formal.
I think they thought I was a spy who'd been implanted by London 2012 or something to keep an eye. But actually, I went to the festival. Me and Ruth, my wife, we went along. And I think Radio 5 Live were there doing an interview in this lovely old cottage next to the church on Eastway, St Mary of Eton Church, the residence. And I thought, wow, they've got radio down here to talk about this festival. They've got this energy and they want to show the world what's happening here. They might not have much. They might be on borrowed time because they know this juggernaut is coming down the road. And we all know what usually happens to artist communities because they're weak and they don't have money.
The money's just not there, is it? The revenue's just not in
exactly there. Exactly. And they don't have security of tenure, so they don't have long protected leases on any of the buildings that they operate in, but they do it anyway. And I think that it demonstrated to me what Olympic legacy could be if you were prepared to just go out and take it. And I think one of the interesting things, because I got involved in lots of conversations that were organised by Hackney Council and various consultancies and LOCOG about that sort of community engagement and legacy promises and all that sort of thing. And no one ever said it's up to you to decide what kind of legacy you want. Go out and get it. We'll help you. It was sort of, I don't know, I wondered. So anyway, my focus was definitely on the artist community because my geography teachers told me that artists are the vanguard of gentrification. And of course, we all know Shoreditch and what's happened there. It used to be full of artists and grassroots-led galleries and what have you. It's very, very
different now.
And so we were able to look at the Shoreditch experience and compare it to Hackney Wick and say, okay, well, if that's Shoreditch now, and this in 2008, what do we do to prevent Hackney Wick from becoming that in 15 years, 20 years time? And I think that's really been the foundation of all my work is trying hard to retain the soul of the place. Because I think most people would say that there are pockets in Shoreditch still, but Hackney Wick has got a lot of soul still.
I like that. Hackney Wick has got a lot of soul. We're going to go into a short commercial break, and when we come back, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that soul and continue with the journey and the story of your story from Queen Mary until now. So please do not join that. Please do not touch that dial. You are locked into Revive FM 94.0 on the Power Hour. We will be right back in this space shortly.
Let us not forget.
Thinking about selling or letting your home?
Let us
With
not
Maxwell
forget
Estates, you don't need to look any
who we
further.
are,
Well
whence we
established
came,
with over
where
15
we
years of
shall
experience, Maxwell
go.
Estates are specialists in
Let
residential
us
sales and
forget.
lettings. We manage over
We have
200
now
properties in
fallen
and around
and
Northwest London, keeping our
forgotten who
landlords and
we
tenants
are.
updated with all the latest laws and legislation.
Wandering on
Based in
earth
Edgware, our
with
experienced
no
specialist negotiators always
compass in
ensure we
hand.
maximize the full potential of your property.
But we
Call
can
us now on
remember,
0208 952
we can
0808 for a free no
remember.
obligation quotation,
Let us
or
not
visit
forget
our
that
website
although cast in this
www.maxwellestates.co.uk for further information. Maxwell
Let us
Estates,
not
the name
forget.
you can trust.
Although
With UK Export Finance and fulfilling more export orders from around the world with working capital support.
Export insurance means I'll get paid when exporting to challenging markets.
At UK Export Finance, we believe no viable UK export should fail for lack of finance or insurance. Between 2022 and 2023, we provided £6.5 billion of government-backed trade finance to support UK exports. Learn how we could help you win export contracts, fulfill orders, and get paid. Search UK Export Finance today.
तकरीबन 60 मिलियन फैमिली स्कूल जाने वाले बच्चे इस वक्त स्कूल में दाखिल होते हैं। प्रायोरिटी का से पसमानदा बच्चों को गुर्बत के मुसलसल चक्कर से बचने का मौका इस रमजान आइए आपके ताउन से इस बात को यकीनी बनाएं कि हर बच्चे को मयारी तालीम हासिल करने का मौका मिलेगा। विकास वेलफेयर फाउंडेशन के जरिए बच्चे की तालीम को स्पॉन्सर करें। बस हमारे मुकामी दफ्तर 12 कार रोड नेल्सन BB9 7JS पर तशरीफ लाएं। हमें 01282 723 455 पर कॉल करें या हमारी वेबसाइट www.minhajwelfare.org पर देखें। ज़्यादातर वीडियोस और अपडेट्स के लिए फेसबुक, इंस्टाग्राम और ट्विटर पर जुड़े रहें।
Nikah, talaq, counseling on matrimonial disputes, Islamic wills, Islamic law of inheritance, or an Islamic verdict on any other issue. The Muslim Sharia Council is at your service. We provide official certification and our experienced and highly qualified imams are available to provide you with guidance when needed. MQI London is based at 292-296 Romford Road, Forest Gate. We are open from Monday to Friday, 2 to 4 p.m. Or alternatively, call us now on 0208 257 1786.
Minhaj Sisters UK are proud to host their biannual retreat Al Tazkiyah 2024 from the 15th of November to the 17th of November. This year, the retreat will take place in Yarnfield Training and Conference Centre at Stoke-on-Trent. We are pleased to announce that we will be joined by Dr. Ghazala Hassan Qadri, President of Minhaj Women League UK, who will be our special guest for 3 days. Join us for an inspirational and fun-packed weekend. To find out more, please visit our website www.altazkia.com.
Thinking of selling or letting your property? Need someone reliable to find the best prospect for your home? Well, look no further. Cameron Adams is here to take care of all your needs. Our professional and experienced team will guide you through the entire process and ensure you find the right client for your property. For a no obligation quotation, contact us now on 0208 558 2000. That's 0208 558 2000. Or visit us at 30 Church Lane in Leytonstone. Cameron Adams, always at your service.
Revive FM
94.0 on the radio,
on your mobile,
and online.
Oh yeah. Hello and welcome back to Revive FM 94.0 on the Power Hour with your host today, myself, Louise Power. This show is about community matters, diversity and inclusion, a platform for women, leadership, entrepreneurship and inspirational stories. This is the second half of the show today, and I have with me in the studio Mr. William Chamberlain. He is a solicitor and serial social entrepreneur. We've been having a really, really good conversation about his journey, you know, coming from Northamptonshire to studying at Queen Mary University, a scholar in geography and social impact, social justice, and really doing amazing things in the community. And what I'd really like to do now, Will, if that's all right, is to really extend on some of these, you know, fantastic golden nuggets, things you've been sharing with me today, sharing with us today. You mentioned your organisation, Hackney Wicked. Also, I know you have the Creative Wick. You also have a community development trust and a newspaper. So I don't really know where to start. So let's just start where you feel most comfortable. I'd really like to know more about these organizations. There's 3 organizations and a newspaper. How did this all start from, you know, your sort of attic apartment, taking 6 months, your wife giving you 6 months, to say, okay, let's find out, let's see what you can do to then now in modern day having all of this? How did it all? Tell me about it.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting actually, because the infrastructure improvements to this part of London around the Olympic Park have been obviously massive. The overground, which was previously the North London line, was the train that came into Hackney Wick, and it was mostly goods trains, and there were 3 passenger trains an hour, I think. And so my wife used to cycle to Mile End to get to work, because that was the nearest regular transport. And we had to buy bicycles. So we went to Bike Works, which used to be based just south of Victoria Park.
I remember them.
They're still around. They're brilliant. Around? And that was my first ever experience of social enterprise.
Right.
They had this amazing business model. I thought they were taking old bikes out of landfill and giving young people and long-term unemployed skills training in bike mechanics and bikeability courses and all that sort of thing, doing up bicycles and then selling them. They were going into schools and teaching cycling. They're going into companies and doing Dr. Bike and all this sort of stuff. They had sort of 10 revenue streams. And I got to know the founder, Jim Blakemore, and ended up doing a little bit of consultancy work for him. But really, Bike Works was my inspiration. And I went back to the guys at Hackney Wicked Art Festival and I said, look, what you're doing here is absolutely brilliant, but you've got to do it again next year because people are going to take you seriously. And if you incorporate as a social enterprise, not for profit, then that's going to help. So I persuaded them eventually, after winning their trust, to incorporate as a community interest company. And so we incorporated. I was the company secretary, and there were 7 directors who all represented workspace providers, artist studios, and galleries in Hackney Wick. And we worked together on delivering the festival again, and it grew so much. I mean, I think there were maybe 800 people that visited in 2008, but by 2011 it was 40,000. So this thing just exploded, and it was getting press coverage in the Washington Post. It was being called,
that's awesome,
the most vital event in London in the summer. It was just incredible. And that's what I mean really about the Soul, because it was so inclusive, so everybody. It was art for art's sake. People just did DIY shows. I think the record was maybe 17 pop-up galleries. Just people found a space. People were exhibiting on the pavement. There were lots of road closures, so dead-end roads. People just set up stalls. And that was the reason why there were so many artists in Hackney Wick and Fish Island, because nobody really bothered about the place in the old days, before the Olympics. It was the Badlands, it was where all the raves, warehouse rave parties, and it, Louise.
I went to a few. In my garage music days, there used to be a club there called the Powerhouse. So shout out to the people from East London that knew about the Powerhouse. We used to go and do garage dancing. I like house music.
There you go. But it was this melting pot, wasn't it? I mean, everybody was there. Every representative of the local community, and no barriers to entry at all. Which was just absolutely wonderful. And so we incorporated this as a social enterprise, and that gave us the sort of respect, if you like, to go to local stakeholders and say, look, there's this art festival. It's got to be part of the Olympic legacy. It's got to be part of the Cultural Olympiad. And that's where we first started, to find the angle. How are we going to get support for this community on the edge of the Olympic Park that's going to get displaced like everywhere else, like East Village in New York, and the usual story. I mean, it grew and grew, and it was just a wonderful thing to be part of. But I realised that the festival came and went every year. And when it was open, when it was on, everyone met each other, great relationships, collaborations, networking that then endured throughout the year. So I thought, well, is there a way that we can just continue that? So I set up a sort of quite an informal breakfast meeting with some like-minded businesses. And one of the things I'd done, because I realized I needed to know a little bit about art, because I'd been dragged around watercolor galleries by my dad when I was a kid. I go, God, this is boring.
But now you probably think those were the little seeds that your dad was sowing,
possibly
at the time.
And another thing, actually, what he did, in the office in Northamptonshire, one of the things that he did every year was have an art exhibition. And so all the clients that were artists, he asked them to submit work, and they hung it all over the office, and they had a sort of drinks party, and all the clients came. And it was a really good opportunity just to meet people and catch up and network and all the rest of it. And when you're standing next to somebody, a stranger, and looking at something on a wall, it's very easy to say, what do you think of that? Or start a conversation. And it got me thinking. And actually, when I was on the Olympic bid, one of the clients that I had to manage, the relationship was with EDF Energy. And I'd come from a sports sponsorship and sports marketing background, and I thought that sports marketing, that's the way that you really get engagement. But EDF Energy sponsored art and culture as their way of encouraging support for the London bid. And so they were doing the Jazz Festival on South Bank, and the Balloon Festival in Bristol, and the Harbour Festival, and all this cultural creativity. And they were far more successful in getting engagement from their audience and their customers than any of the others. So I thought, okay,
something here.
Art and culture, we're all consumers of art and culture, whether we know it, appreciate it or not. Film, music, TV, books, newspapers,
social media now.
Social media. So I sort of changed my mind and realised the power of art and culture to bring people together and to forge networks, and so the social enterprise started. The breakfast meeting started, and it started getting a bit of momentum. I persuaded a smoked salmon factory owner called Lance Foreman, who had been absolutely against the Olympics. And when I was on the bid, he'd been on the TV in the morning saying, we can't have the Olympics, got to compensate all these people who are being displaced. And I think he'd just built a new factory where the stadium was going to be. He was going to be displaced. He was angry about that. And he was a very good communicator, and he sort of became the face of the campaign against the Olympics for the businesses that were on the Olympic Park, or what would become the Olympic Park. And I saw that his new factory was in Hackney Wick, and I went to meet him because I thought, well, he might be an ally. And I persuaded him after quite a while of sort of getting to know him. He's got big attic space, 6,000 square foot. I said, can you lend it to us for the festival first? And so Hackney Wick had a takeover of his attic and had 2 exhibitions in it. And then after that, it was a great success. So I said, can I run it as a gallery? And for 3 years, I ran a gallery in a smoked salmon factory, learning about art, culture, communication.
Well, that's art in itself, isn't it? Being able to have one space where community shares, even though it's smoked salmon and art, you know, these are the things that make things such a multicultural space sometimes, when you're having different things going on in different spaces, but the same space.
And so, well, and exactly. And it meant that the opening nights were really good. There was catering, there was, sometimes we got 400 people to
I like smoked salmon.
And we did we did practically an exhibition every month, and they were all self-curated. So I would find someone that curated and brought it in. So that was a great opener. And actually, that's where we had our first breakfast meeting in the smoked salmon factory, and there were about 9 of us there. Some of them are still members of the cultural interest group, which was what it became known as. And this breakfast meeting, the creative business networking meeting. And we started off just by saying, well, if you're going to have an exhibition at your place, maybe we can coordinate it so we open on the same night, so then we can send people to you and vice versa. You know, just starting to work out how we collaborate and support each other. I also noticed that a lot of the established organisations in the area were keeping their contacts quite closely guarded to themselves, and I wanted to try and make that a little bit more democratic and access to stakeholders. So we started inviting the stakeholders from the Olympics to come along, and it soon grew into this sort of organisation that developers would join as well to share their plans for the place. New businesses coming into the area would join and say, I'm looking to source supply chain locally, all this sort of thing. And it's still going today. We've got over 5,000 members. It's given birth to an awful lot of innovation and businesses really that have sprung out of it.
That's brilliant. What if there was 2 or 3 things? I know that you meet regularly, don't you, once a month? If there are 2 or 3 things that you find, I mean, I think it's fantastic, that sort of have been impactful from these meetings. What are some of the things that come out of these meetings that you have?
Well, it's interesting. In the first meeting that we almost formally took the minutes of the meeting was in December 2011. And we were talking about setting up a community development trust, because one of the biggest problems, as I said earlier, is that the creative sector doesn't own any of the assets.
Right.
And I think that's one of the biggest problems, that the community that's had all this development done to it actually doesn't own a stake very much in any of it. And I think maybe with hindsight, that could have been built into the legacy plan from the outset. It's like, okay, is there some sort of community development trust model or community land trust model that means that there is protected affordability? Because, you know, the land values, as Ken Livingstone wanted, have balanced, and now land in East London is as much or nearly as much as it is in West London. And that means that the rents have gone up, and you know, we all know what that means. So yeah, we talked at that first meeting about community development trust. It wasn't actually until 2017 that we incorporated the Hackney Wick and Fish Island Community Development Trust formally, and that was for a variety of reasons. I was always told, and in all the country, the CIG meetings, the stakeholders would come, and you know, they were very supportive, but they were very, very, very sure that everything had to be community led.
Right.
And so that meant that a group of us had to work together collaboratively and go at the pace that felt most natural. And that meant that sometimes the conversation got really quite close. Yeah, we're going to do this. And then something would happen. And it was interesting. I'm actually doing a PhD in this at Loughborough University, London. because they gave me an opportunity and a studentship to sort of explore the role that the Cultural Interest Group has played in the regeneration of this part of East London. And looking at the minutes recently as part of my research, the conversation about the Community Development Trust completely disappeared in 2014. Now, whether we were just so focused on the fact that the park was opening and it, all exciting and what have you, I don't know. But it came back again with a vengeance in 2017, and there was a big campaign called Save Hackney Wick that was very much sort of led by the warehouse community that gave the catalyst for us eventually to, right, we're going to do this, and we incorporated. And sometimes you need that threat to really galvanize,
get things going. And to understand sometimes, I always say sometimes through adversity sometimes comes opportunity. And sometimes it's the adversity really that becomes a boiling point for it. Oh, you know what? This is it. This is the time. Let's get it going.
Exactly. Enough's enough, and that was the point. So that was great. So we incorporated again as another social enterprise, a not-for-profit. In the interim, I guess in 2013, I had incorporated Hackney Wick and Fish Island Community Interest Company, which is now trading name is Creative Wick. So it's another not-for-profit, and I think it's been a struggle. That 6 months turned into 6 years before I was actually paying myself what even amounted to the salary that I gave up to move to Hackney Wick and Fish Island in sort of 2008. But I think the journey it's exciting, and the model you mentioned, the newspaper, the newspaper originally actually came out in 2011, 12 and 13, and there were 3 annual issues of the newspaper, and it was set up by Darren Ellis from C Studio and an academic called Isaac from I think he was at Goldsmiths, who was the editor. And really it was used as a sort of manifesto, as a way of galvanizing support for the creative sector in what was thought to be a very, very adverse situation. They commissioned Ian Sinclair to write some of his psychogeography, anti-Olympic rhetoric writing in the first issue, which was a fantastic achievement to get someone of that standing to make a contribution. The paper, as I say, it launched a manifesto for how you support communities that are under pressure like this, how you provide opportunities for everybody in every price point and from a diverse set of local groups and communities. And we tried to get some funding to bring it back. And I was always very interested in bringing it back. And it wasn't actually until 2020. So we had a lockdown baby. The newspaper came out in October 2020 in partnership with a hyperlocal media organisation called the Local Content Company, who's our joint venture partner and who had history in hyperlocal publishing with things like the Gas Holder, the Euston Towner, the Camdenist. I think they've got one. They had the Leighton Stoner that you may have seen. So I worked with Tom. We actually met in 2019, again through the network. Tory Bravery from Mainyard Studios, who was helping me develop Creative Wick as a social enterprise. Went to a breakfast meeting that UCL was at, and Tom was there from the Camdenist, and they all got meetings and say, oh, you should speak to Will. And so, that's how it happened.
So it was like a sweet spot of everybody just being there, right time, right place, editorial for sharing information, manifesto, what's going on, what's happening in Creative Wick, how can we find out, people really talking about their what they're doing. And I've seen the paper and I think it's phenomenal. It is really, 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 really good. But we're just going to take one more short commercial break. So I didn't want you to get too far in, and we will be right back. Please do not touch that dial.
पानी के बगैर जिंदगी का तसव्वुर नामुमकिन है। दुनिया भर में तकरीबन 2 अरब से ज्यादा लोग ऐसे हैं जिनको पीने का साफ और महफूज पानी मुयस्सर नहीं। रोजमर्रा के इस्तेमाल के साथ साथ पीने के लिए इन्हें आलूदा पानी पर इन्हिसार करना पड़ता है, जिसकी वजह से बच्चे या बड़े सब मुख्तलिफ बीमारियों का शिकार हो जाते हैं, जो अक्सर जानलेवा साबित होती हैं। इस रमजान मुबारक मिनहाज वेलफेयर फाउंडेशन की वाटर फॉर ऑल अपील का हिस्सा बनिए। आप सिर्फ 180 पाउंड से एक छोटा हैंडपंप नस्ब कर सकते हैं, जो 15 खानदानों को साफ पानी उनकी दहलीज पर मुहैया करते हैं। नस्बशुदा हैंडपंप की रिपोर्ट और दीगर तफसीलात डोनर को मुहैया कर दी जाती हैं, ताकि वो जान सके कि उनकी अमानत हकदारों तक मुहैया कर दी गई है। मिनहाज वेलफेयर फाउंडेशन को अपनी ज़कात, सदका या खैराती अतियात देने के लिए अपने मकामी MWF ऑफिस 12 कार रोड, नेल्सन, BB9 7JS तशरीफ लाएं। हमें 01282 723 455 पर कॉल करें या हमारी वेबसाइट www.minhajwelfare.org पर देखें। ताज़ा तरीन वीडियोस और अपडेट्स के लिए फेसबुक, Instagram और Twitter पर जुड़े रहें।
Thinking of selling or letting your property? Need someone reliable to find the best prospect for your home? Well, look no further. Cameron Adams is here to take care of all your needs. Our professional and experienced team will guide you through the entire process and ensure you find the right client for your property. For a no obligation quotation, contact us now on 0208 558 2000. That's 0208 558 2000. Or visit us at 30 Church Lane in Leytonstone. Cameron Adams, always at your service.
Thinking about selling or letting your home? With Maxwell Estates, you don't need to look any further. Well established with over 15 years of experience, Maxwell Estates are specialists in residential sales and lettings. We manage over 200 properties in and around Northwest London, keeping our landlords and tenants updated with all the latest laws and legislations. Based in Edgware, our experienced specialist negotiators always ensure we maximize the full potential of your property. Call us now on 0208 952 0808 for a free no obligation quotation, or visit our website www.maxwellestates.co.uk for further information. Maxwell Estates, the name you can trust.
Minhaj Sisters UK are proud to host their biannual retreat Al Tazkiyah 2024 from the 15th of November to the 17th of November. This year, the retreat will take place in Yarnfield Training and Conference Centre at Stoke-on-Trent. We are pleased to announce that we will be joined by Dr. Ghazala Hassan Qadri, President of Minhaj Women League UK, who will be our special guest for 3 days. Join us for an inspirational and fun-packed weekend. To find out more,
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome back to the Power Hour on Revive FM 94.0 with your host today, myself, Louise Power. And in the studio, I have William Chamberlain. William is a solicitor and a serial entrepreneur, and we have been talking all things East London, London Olympic Park, East London, London Olympic legacy, Creative Wick, Hackney Wick, and, you know, arts. We've been speaking about the arts. We've been speaking about how this all comes together. And just before the break, William was sharing with me his development of the newspaper, The Wick, and how that, you know, came into fruition really by all of the right people being there all at the right time. But intrinsically, what Will and I were just discussing during the break was how important it is for people who are part of the pipeline and the end users of newspapers, manifestos, anything like that, being in the room, and also how important diversity of thought is. You know, it's so important for different people from different spaces being part of those decisions and being part of what it is, whatever it is that we're trying to create. So back over to you, Will, if you can just keep elaborating with me about what that space looks like, and then the Wick newspaper developed, and here we are.
Yeah, thanks very much, Louise. Yes, I think the Cultural Interest Group, the CIG, it's an open business network. Effectively, it's got no barriers to entry. It's free to join. Anyone is welcome to be a member. All you've got to do is give us your email address, and we'll put you on the mailing list. You can turn up to every meeting or none, or you know, you can join online, or you can turn up in person. And what we try and do is make it as accessible as possible for everybody from whatever background or community they come from. And I think East London is a community of communities, and it's very difficult to claim that you represent the community, although you hear it an awful lot. But what we try and do is bring people together and engineer serendipity. I think, you know, that meeting that Tori and Tom were at with UCL then led to the introduction, which led to the birth of the Wick newspaper. We're on issue 13 now. It's a quarterly title. We get most of the stories and the content from the CIG meeting every month. As I said earlier, there's all sorts of amazing collaborations that have come out of the CIG. As I said earlier, the Community Development Trust conversation started there. But it's always been this sort of safe space where difficult conversations can happen. And of course, as soon as big money and investment and development comes to an area, there is a lot of tension. And over the years, we've been able to develop and build really, really positive relationships with the development sector to share a vision of how we can work together towards this sort of shared vision. And I hope that Hackney Wick and Fish Island is becoming something of an example that others could potentially follow, because we talk about continuous consultation rather than a developer that just comes along and sets up their boards in a cafe or whatever they do to say this is what's coming, and then they disappear again and you never see them again until the building's up. And you know, that model has changed a lot, and I think developers now recognize that they have to become good neighbors in the place in which they develop. They have a much longer term relationship with the place that they develop now, particularly with the private rental sector and the shared ownership that most are coming forward.
A question: How are they held? You just brought something to mind, and whilst you were talking, I was thinking, how are they held to account in between those moments of the doing and then going away?
Well, it's interesting that we use the newspaper, and that's part of the reason why it's there. And we've had a really good example of this, because a fantastic organization, there's another trust called the Stour Trust that was in negotiation for a building that would become a creative workspace or artist studio building on a long lease at a peppercorn rent, and the developer went back on the promise.
Right.
And we were able to do a story about it in the newspaper that brought or helped to bring, of course, with all of these things, there are lots and lots of people involved, and it would be wrong ever to claim that there's only one reason why things happen, because there's lots and lots of conversations going on at the same time. But we did a story in the newspaper that helped to bring the developer back to the table, that then has resulted in the Stour Trust being given a long lease, and it's nearly 1,000-year lease on a building in Hackney Wick and Fish Island at a peppercorn rent for the Stour Trust. So, you know, creative studio space, permanently affordable studio space has been protected forever in Hackney Wick and Fish Island. And not only that, but the Creative Land Trust have bought there, but their first acquisition was in Hackney Wick because we were lobbying so hard with Outset and Studio Makers and the GLA and the LLDC, and Hackney Council have transferred 2 of their public assets over to Creative Workspace in Hackney Wick, and they're delivering so much social value from these underused council-owned assets that, again, people can learn from this. If you've got an underused council asset, give it to a workspace provider, creative workspace provider. I think what they've learned is in the impact report that for every £1 invested, a £6 benefit, social value benefit, has been generated.
That's brilliant.
Which is absolutely fantastic.
And for the creatives in the community, people listen to this show. You know, the great thing about this show is that we can share it and reshare it, and because you can just play it and play it and play it again, and hopefully, you know, we get some like global kind of impact with what it is that we're talking about today and sharing with the world. How do people in the community, local people interested in space or art or otherwise, how do they connect in with Hackney Wick and Fish Island? If you were going to take me on a journey, and I live in East London and I'm here and I'm from Forest Gate, where we're based now, take me on that journey. How do I connect? What's the best thing for me to do? I'm interested. You know, I'd like to be part of the area because it's vibrant. It's a great place to network. You know, I'd like to be able to, you know, sell my art or work for an organization. how do I take me on that journey? What's the best way to go forward?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We've always been very sure that East London has got so much creative talent. There are so many young people in their bedrooms or with their friends making creative content on their phones, on their laptops, on their whatever they can, really, and trying to find a pipeline, opportunities for young people to access opportunity and careers and rewarding, well-paid, meaningful careers in the creative industries is absolutely what we're all about. We always commission young writers for the paper. We always pay photographers and illustrators for the paper. We distribute 11,000 copies of the paper around the Olympic Park and into the 4 host boroughs. So pick up a copy of the paper. There's a contact page in there. Get involved. Just sign up to the mailing list. Get involved. It's for everybody. So please do that.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's great. I really love sharing with the community about how they can engage and what it is that they can do, because I think there are some people, you don't know what you don't know, right? And for some people, they have got so much skills and experience, but then how do I translate that into an actual business? How do I translate that into something that I can see visually? How do I get there? For others, I mean, this was one of the things that stood out to me when I was working in the Olympic Park, that sometimes there was a divide between the community and the Olympic Park in the fact that people would sort of see it as a space, is it an inclusive space? Can I do something there? And I think today what we're trying to say to them is absolutely yes. Come, enjoy the fruits of what has been created, because, we'd really like you to sort of be involved. We've just got a few more minutes, and I'd like to ask you one of my fun questions I ask everybody. So if you could go back and speak to yourself, your 16-year-old self, or even younger, what would you say? What would you say? And I know that people think, this is a big question. But if you thought, I could go back and, I'm here now and I've learned all of this coming from where I've come from, Northamptonshire, the journey into East London, going to university. That must have been, that's probably even for another show, because you mentioned something today that I'd love to touch on another time, when you spoke about the 6 years not really getting a salary. And I can only imagine the resilience that took. But just tell me, what would you sort of say to yourself now?
Yeah, I think, it's been a journey, and ultimately it's been very rewarding, even if financially it hasn't necessarily. But of course, we're all on that journey towards sustainability in our businesses, and the signs are positive. I think it comes down to, and I'm ashamed to say it probably, but I should have listened to my dad and worked a bit harder. I could have done it. I think probably I could have done it a bit quicker if I'd worked harder at university, come out with a good degree instead of not a very good degree. And I think that always has a bit of an impact on your future, and it can slow you. But, with the right drive and the right determination and the willingness to put yourself forward and be brave and confident. And, I hold a crystal in my hand, because public speaking actually makes me feel quite nervous, even on the radio. But you use whatever tools you can. I've got a blue crystal in my hand that I use to help me through difficult times. And I think you just got to use whatever you can, to get there. If you've got a vision and an idea and a plan, then don't give it up.
Yeah. And you've done really well today. You've done really, really well. Coming on the radio isn't always easy. And, for some people, they think, we've got all this time, we've got so much to say. But actually, when we start talking, we realize we have so much to say. And actually, there's so much more I could have asked you. So you've got to come back.
We run out.
And you're going to have to come back and bring that with you, so that you come back and do it all again and ask more questions. Because I think that, there is something about us bringing some of the people over from Hackney Wick and Fish Island and talking about how the community can then access those startups and those SMEs that you've got, this, small to medium organisations, those community interest organisations, and and for us to talk about them a little bit in a little bit more intricate details. But it has been an absolute pleasure having you in the studio.
Louise. Lovely to chat
having
to
the
you.
studio. Please do share this show locally and worldwide. And I look forward to having you back again. Thank you so much, listeners. Thank you for joining us on the Power Hour today. We have had William Chamberlain in the studio, a solicitor and serial entrepreneur. Haven't we been lucky? And I look forward to seeing you again, same place, same time, Thursdays between 12 and 1 o'clock on the Power Hour. Please do not touch this dial. You have been locked into Revive FM 94.0.
Nikah, Talaq, counseling on matrimonial disputes, Islamic wills,